Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Strategy Guide, where we show you how to get strategic victories and tactical victories in your favorite video games. Hey guys, M12 here, back with another part to our strategy guide for Age of Conquest 4 Modern World Map. And well, let's check the info here. 0, 0, 0. There's only 4 nations left. It started back at part 1 with only 111 nations. Now, it's pretty clear where everything lies, borders. And some of these places don't necessarily need them, but we're in recent conflicts, but I'm pretty much going to leave everything the way it is. Most of them are just borders and coastlines. They're good examples of what, where, and so forth. Okay. So, as we took over several nations, we now need to repopulate them with armies. Nope, that one's not border. Let's go here. This one's going to be doing some attacking. We'll leave that there. Actually, this one's bordered to more troops, so I'd rather have 1,000 there. Actually I'm gonna put 500 there. Okay. So, guys, what we're going to be doing this turn is I think we're gonna go and pretty much finish off this scenario. There's only 4 nations left. I'm playing as one of them, so there's 3 enemies. I can easily finish off people if I want to. But first, they only 4 territories, and we know their leader's there by default because we border 3 of their territories via land, and we would know if their leader is there. But what they don't know is that I'm going to take them out with the Navy. 1,000 units that I'm going to place there and sneak attack there. Once I get that, I pretty much do not have to worry about any place in the Mediterranean being attacked because they're very close to it. Here, I think they could actually put units here and so forth. Except from this way, and here, through the sea here, but I'm actually going to be deploying navies there to ensure that that does not happen as well. So what I'm going to do is put 1,000 there. And put 1,000 here. Now, for what I'm going to do next, probably best if I go for the next biggest nation. That way, I can easily not have to worry about them, and I have less borders to worry about, because of course I'm going to border them and have more borders with said nation, because they are bigger. So now I'm going to put all of my units that way. Now I'm going to send all of the units that I have here up into here, but I'm going to send some replacement ones, about 200 that way, because this is still coastline, and I don't want that to be attacked. Now, because of the low number of units here, and that there's less than 100, tells me that they attacked your last turn, so I'm going to bring in a lot of troops, just in case they build troops here to attack me here. I got that front covered. Now what I'm going to do is launch units here. Now, another thing I'm going to be doing is cutting off this coastline here. Now, the reason why I'm cutting off this access to this coastline here is that they could easily send support to this island here if they need to. Build navies, attack coastline here. No, I'm not going to have to probably worry about it that much, knowing that I've reduced their accessibility to that coastline. Nonetheless, those territories on the coastline can and will be, guarded no matter what. Okay, so let me see here what I have to do. So what I'm going to be doing is moving that there. This territory can still attack it here. But I'm going to move this here. So pretty much all of these territories have just been attacked, or going to be during the attack phase. Now what I'm going to be doing for this is actually moving in all of my troops here. I'm going to move this here. I'm going to be moving 3 there. I'm going to be moving these on top of them. Let's see what else. Why am I doing 10 at a time? I do not know. I'm going to move 400 that way. And 400 this way. Now down here in South Africa and Northern Africa, because it sort of stretches between them, I realized that I have fully surrounded this territory here, which means that the only way it can get additional troops is if someone were to buy them, because they can't send troops from here to here because it just does not connect. So I'm going to go here and here and attack them from both sides here, while still maintaining troops on these borders here, which are actual borders that are probably going to be involved in some conflicts this battle phase if they wish to attack. Which at this point, I really leave them no option. They know they're going to fall, and it's better to do something. It's better to try and stop your enemy rather than just doing nothing. I mean, for all I know, they still could have a chance of winning. I mean, they could go, if they happen to launch a naval raid here, and then go right there and attack my guy, which, by the way, I do not know why that has less than 100, but you want to know what? Chances of them actually having enough money to actually raid the territory that my leader's on, which is actually not its capital because it's moved, is a little bit different. Okay, well, okay, so we finished them off, and this makes sense. Now let's see. Okay, so now that this has happened, I'm going to launch an attack here against this. Now, of course, what else I'm going to do is I'm going to... No, I want to move my troops here. I'm going to take this over. I'm going to add some more troops to this coastline. I mean, we're near an enemy. I mean, it'll be pretty much like I said earlier on, be redundant to arm the borders after a while, but we're still in conflict with them, and anything could happen in terms of how many troops they buy and send right to their, right to where their leader is. Now, for some of you, there's not really an actual place that's called a capital for every nation, just that if your leader gets taken over, then you automatically lose. I've just referred to capital, for some of you who may not know, as the territory in which your leader started out in. It's a term I use to specify a specific place or in relation to that place. I don't think that was in the tutorial level or anything like that. It's just something I came up with. Sort of like when I watch other YouTubers who like play Call of Duty all the time on their channel. They like have specific names for callouts for like certain places on maps and whatnot. This is me doing that, but for a strategy game. Okay, apparently I can only build 8 units there. That is not good. Okay, let's move that there. Now, I predict that it'll be easier the more and more territory that we take over to stop them. Or at least, at the very least, they're going to try and put all their troops in one territory and fight back. But at the same time, if they do that, I'm just gonna take a huge chunk out of their units. At this point, I could effectively say that I could use the War of Attrition on them and still win, because they can lose a lot of guys and I can lose a lot of guys, but I can afford to lose a whole lot more, as the amount of money I have allows me to buy more troops, and the fact that I already have a whole lot more troops. As a matter of fact, I have so many troops, my military upkeep is 15,000. Nope, not 15, 1,000, no, it's 5,139 actually. Which, by the way, I can actually reduce if I wanted to by disbanding troops in areas which are not borders. Which, after a while, makes sense that you should do that, because sometimes the money can screw you over in the end if you don't have enough. But for me, just doing a few, you'll notice somewhat of a benefit, but it would be better if you could do all of them, but which don't get me wrong, I could if you have enough action points for it. But the best thing to do is just go and do it in areas where you think you'll be attacked the least, or ones that have the most amount of troops to get back your most amount of money. So now that I've got that pretty much squared away, I go over here. I reduced that by a lot. It's in the 4,800 now, which is quite a lot. Then again, there are certain territories that just will not be attacked, like this one. They'd have to do an amphibious assault on us into Europe, or march here through land, but that's not gonna... I'd love to see the day when they can actually successfully pull that off, which would be like never. Okay. So now that I got that, I technically do not need this naval unit here, and this sea here, but doesn't matter. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to see if there are any more conflicts that I need to worry about. No. Although I do want to leave an additional 100 behind just in case we don't take it and they decide to counterattack. This is not a border, so... or a coastline, so I'm just going to get rid of these quickly. And now, I think it's time to end this turn and see where we go from here. Now, effectively, at this time, I only have 2 territories left that I need to take over. Let's be honest. I could easily do this. Now, at this point, you could wait around and offer them through an election, which I cannot do because it hasn't been long enough since the last one, which was a great challenge, hence why I'm at war with everyone. For recognition, if they agree, they still exist, and we are crowned winners. If they say no, then you can just raid their last territory if you want. Now, I'm not going to dilly-dally with that and do that and let them have a chance to build up an army, of course, but if I see them building up numbers, of course, I can easily build up more numbers than they could possibly have by instantly putting 1,000 on a territory if I chose to. But you want to know what? I don't need that because I know one thing, and that is that we're going to end this here. Now, I'm going to quickly go over some other stuff that I want to do, and that you could do as a separate, if you play as a separate nation. I just picked one and showed you a strategy and ran with it throughout the whole time of this one gigantic battle for control of Earth. But there are other things that could have happened that I want to go over in other possible scenarios. Now, I got a victory there. So let's go back Actually, let's start a new game. Medieval. World map. Modern. We had 111 nations. Okay. So let's go to create. Now let's go look at this. I started out with the US and I quickly expanded. And then through wars, I expanded and took over pretty much North and South America. Quickly, except for Canada, but eventually then they decided to go with war with me. For the most part, we were on peaceful and friendly terms as allies. And Mexico at first until they got taken over by one of these and then so forth. And, well, you know how everything went if you watched all the videos. But there are some other things that I want to talk about and go into a bit more detail in this is to other strategies they could employ early on to give you that advantage, which I had the advantage of expansion very quickly from the place that I was at, and I was pretty much the biggest nation, except for a few moments where they found the leader of an enemy nation, took them over, and then got all 20 of their territories, and that put them ahead, but not for very long, as I was able to sustain it for much longer, as for the most part, when I did take over a nation's leader to get all their territory, it was small. That way I didn't have to divide my troops against 20 new borders at a given time. But also like to point out from the viewpoint that Greenland is also another candidate for a good one, as you could easily expand on islands from over here. Go over here and grab these ones up in Nunavut and all this stuff. And even the island of Greenland itself. The only downside is that you don't have a whole lot of good population, as you can see here by these small tents. That indicates that there's a low population there, but it's somewhat good for expansion early on. United States, of course, great for expansion because no matter where you're going, you're expanding into a city. So population isn't gonna limit you to how many troops you can buy per territory. It's gonna be more based on money on that retrospect. Whereas in Greenland, it's going to be based more on population, but both of them have a decent starting point. I would say US is better. Now, on the other hand, I like to say Russia is kind of good as well, as you're close enough to be able to where if they start to get fast expansion early on, you could go to war with them, take out their leader, and possibly destroy them, sort of like what I did with the Byzantine Empire when I did another strategy guide for Age of Conquest 4, which you can find in the info card that I will edit in right here. Now, also with Russia is that no matter which direction you go in for starting, you also have large cities that you can also take hold of and make use of for the large populations, of course, to use in terms of fighting. Which throughout history and military history, you know that typically when they go to battle, they will usually have an advantage in terms of numbers, but that necessarily doesn't mean that they get victory. A good example would be the Battle of the Three Emperors, or what is known as Marengo to some nations, as a battle where Napoleon perfectly showed that having a larger army does not mean you will get a victory. You can also use that in other places. Now, Middle East here, you pretty much, some nations really can't expand only to one territory, provided that their neighbors don't take it first, and pretty much have to go to war early on. As a matter of fact, this nation here pretty much is just surrounded. Some of these nations you just have to go to war with. Like Germany, for example. They can only expand this way. If someone takes that, then, well, they have to go to war with someone to expand. And that's what sort of stunts me, because you have to pour all your money and all your population from one territory to taking out another one. England has some room for expansion. They don't have as much as Greenland or US, but nonetheless, an island early on is good for protection, as you would have to spend 50% of what your army is in cost. So 100 troops cost 50 to just embark them onto a naval ship to attack you. So early on, you sort of have an advantage there. Now, down here in Africa, I like to point out, some of these nations do have the potential to become big enough to wage war against other nations that are of their size, and some will just end up being small because they border each other in conflicts early on, and like I said, and as you could see, a good example of how they lost all of their troops, or all of their territories from nations early on happened here. And how it was mainly controlled by, when I started moving over here, I'd say 7 nations, and there's like 3 times that here. There's like 21 here. I'm not actually counting them out. That's just a rough estimate. Now, Australia, on the other hand, is another one, because it's sort of like the Greenland one, but you have room for bigger expansion, but you have more neighbors, as you have New Guinea, New Zealand, Indonesia, as other ones. And if people expand down here in the islands, more in the island sense, you can also be dealing with Philippines, or maybe even U.S. if they decide to expand, or some of the South American nations, if they expand over into these islands over here, if they feel like it's necessary to. But like that, you still have the same thing here. Now, one territory islands, typically you're protected by water, but you have to expand fast and grab territory. Otherwise, the only way for expansion is war, and if you don't have a whole lot of power, then you really can't wage war that well. Now, Mongolia is kind of good because you can sort of spread out and expand to maybe 10 territories before you have to go to conflict, but you'll be at borders with some people in maybe 2 or 3 turns, because you could expand. If you go right here, this territory here, this territory, you pretty much cut off Kazakhstan from here, from expanding this way, because they have to go around the mountains, and that sort of limits where they can expand to, and how they have to limit, or how they have to go about it with their expansions, which actually is kind of good if you want to grab this whole line here, although you'd also be in competition with North Korea, as they would probably want to do the same as well. Now, but other than that, there's probably going to be a bloodbath down here in Southeast Asia, as all of these nations, and the way they're strategically positioned, means that you have to expand for maybe 1 or 2 territories, then go to war. And sometimes it's usually best on who can get the best navy, because if I'm in Vietnam here, and I want to go to war with Bangladesh, but to get some of their territory, maybe overpower some of these neighboring territories, but I don't want to necessarily fight them on land quite yet, but I want to get more territory, I can make a giant navy, come around, and surprise them, and that's something that you sort of have to rely on in some certain situations as to why you would need a bigger navy. Now, anyway, guys, I think now is the perfect time to end off this episode here of me finishing off the Modern World map, and some other different strategies that could have been deployed early on for your use in this game of Age of Conquest 4. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, take the time to leave any comments, questions, or feedback for me in the comment section down below would be highly appreciated, as it helps me out a lot. And I will see you guys later in another video. Bye bye!